Good evening, everyone. I'm Sharona Bishop, sitting in for the great one, Lou Dobbs tonight. Senate Democrats have published a report on the cascading effects of abortion bans across America. In a nutshell, it shows that these policies might actually be discouraging people from engaging in promiscuous behavior by making abortions so inconvenient. Abortion is one of the only, if not the only, issue that Democrats are counting on to save them this year. And that's a dubious gambit, but you know what? It's really all that they have. It raises one question for Republicans that we really should be considering. If Kamala Harris replaces Biden, what might her radical abortion stance actually look like? With us now to discuss this is Abby Johnson. She is the founder of And Then There Were None, a ministry that helps abortion clinic workers transition out of that industry. Abby, thank you so much for joining us.
Of course. Thank you, Sharona.
Well, I'm curious to, what is your position on this? Kamala's been pretty radical. I follow her Instagram just to see what crazy things she's going to say today. And it seems to me that abortion on demand is her agenda.
Yeah, I would agree. I think for the Democratic Party, period, I think their goal is to create a new Roe versus Wade, except they want it to be more radical. They don't want it just to be, okay, well, the states decide, at the third trimester. That's not what they want. They want a new Roe versus Wade, a more liberal Roe versus Wade. They want something that is going to allow abortion from conception until the date of birth. And of course, they would like it to be funded by our tax dollars.
That goes without saying. Everything they want to do is going to be on the backs of taxpayers for sure. This decline, though, the report that came out from the Democratic staffers shows that abortion is actually down across the country, even in the states that are still allowing it. What do you make of that?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. I mean, it has been kind of funny to watch some of these celebrities come out and say, I'm taking back my reproductive rights. And until abortion is legal everywhere, I'm not going to engage in sexual activity. I'm like, fantastic. That was the point the whole time, right? Is make a choice before a life even begins in the womb. That's the beauty of reproductive freedom, right? You do have that freedom. I do think that surgical abortions are down, and we see that. One thing, though, that we cannot account for are all of these mail-in abortion pills that are coming in from out of the country. They're coming from India, China, Belgium, all over the place, and they're being distributed into every single state, even in states like mine, in the state of Texas, where abortion is technically illegal.
No, I've actually seen newspaper ads promoting the sale of the pill in places like Colorado and California. So I agree with that. But the sentiment that really struck everyone was this late term abortion. I think that's where there was so much disbelief that as a society, we would actually dismember healthy, beautiful, fully developed babies. And that outrage has really helped us in the long run. What do you think is going to be the next move with these abortion pills? Because I honestly don't see a whole lot of action. I know initially there was, but really the radicalness of eliminating the majority of those late term abortions has really been, somewhat rectified in the majority of states across the union. So what do you think?
I mean, I think that the medication abortion pill, that regimen, those drugs that is the biggest threat right now to the pro-life movement. That's the biggest threat to life right now. We know that over 60% of abortions are being committed through these pills. I think one of the things that is going to happen that we have not, I think that the liberals have not anticipated is that with these medication abortion pills, women are actually delivering children at home. And they are giving out these pills for women who are in their 15th week of pregnancy, 16th week of pregnancy. We're talking about a fully developed unborn human being. And I don't think that we even really know what the emotional repercussions are fully, what those emotional repercussions are going to be for these women who think, I'm just pregnant with a clump of cells. And now they see a fully formed child in the toilet and they have to make a decision. Do I take the baby out? Do I bury it? Do I treat it like a human being, or do I flush it down the toilet?
Well, you are an example of that story and what it did to you, how it changed you and changed your belief about abortion. Do you have women even now that are reaching out to you because they've experienced that, taking the morning after or these chemical abortion pills?
We do. And in fact, we work a lot with the abortion pill rescue hotline. Our ministry, and then there were none, but also our ministry Loveline, we're reaching out to women every day. And in turn, they're reaching back out to us. And so we are hearing from women they feel betrayed. They feel betrayed by the abortion industry who told them that this was not going to be a big deal. It was going to be like a heavy menstrual cycle. And now we know that when we start surveying women, over 50% felt like they were dying as they're lying on their bathroom floor, hemorrhaging. I mean, this is not safe for women, but under this current administration, they support this. They support these abortion pills. And unfortunately, what we've recently heard from President Trump and also from his frontrunner, J.D. Vance, for vice president, is that they're not going to do anything to suppress these medication abortion pills. And that's very concerning because women are dying from these medication abortion pills.
I imagine I really appreciate you bringing that up. I was definitely going to go there with you on kind of this softening of the Republican position on abortion. And with the Supreme Court, of course, overturning Roe v. Wade, I think people are feeling like they don't have a responsibility anymore in the political realm. That it's going to rest on county by county, state by state, to make these changes that you're talking about and have this kind of influence. But when we have something like fentanyl, that's killing thousands and thousands of people. Obviously, the federal government takes a position on that. And in this particular situation, same thing. Not to mention, are there other ramifications? Let's say the woman does not die. What are other ramifications of taking the chemical abortion pill?
So we know, according to studies that were done outside of the United States, where they have universal health care and they have good and appropriate tracking inside of hospitals, we know that approximately 20% of women who are taking these medication abortion pills, they have severe complications, and that can mean hemorrhage. A lot of times the hemorrhage is caused because parts of their baby are still left in their womb and their uterus was not able to expel the entire baby. If that happens and there is a part of that child left in her womb, that can cause a very serious infection, that can cause sepsis. And the majority of women who are dying from medication abortion pills are dying from infection. They're dying from sepsis. And that's because part of their baby is literally left inside of their womb and they don't even realize it.
So I've been extremely outspoken about the comprehensive sex education courses happening all across the country. They've all been adopting them. They demonstrate not only abortion, but these morning after pills or chemical abortion pills. And you will never find them talking about this. They will not talk about the hazards of that. They do make it seem as though it's just a quick little fix. If something should happen, you have a little whoops, you take a pill, and it's all over. With that in mind, I mean, we have public education that's pushing this. We have obviously governments that are pushing this. Colorado governor with Amy Schumer, you mentioned the Hollywood elites. Amy Schumer literally did a commercial for the state of Colorado to promote abortion for commerce. And this kind of bizarre disconnect with the ramifications you talked about, of course, physical, but emotional. We're never going to know the full impact of that. What do you think is the government's position, should be the government's job at this point in regulating those chemical abortion pills?
Well, I think there's a few things that we need to look at. There's over 70 websites where you can access these dangerous pills. And I've been to most of the websites. I've looked at them. It's interesting because they don't check identification. They don't check date of birth. You don't have to send them an ultrasound to even show that you're pregnant or to show that you have a pregnancy inside of your uterus. You could have an ectopic pregnancy, and they're sending you these pills that are actually going to cause further harm if you have an ectopic pregnancy. But they're not checking, you're not talking to a doctor on these websites. But one thing I have noticed is that for almost all of the websites, they have a US payer system. So it could be something like PayPal. or something like that. They have some sort of US-based payer system. And I think that that's one way that we can go after these websites that are promoting these dangerous drugs. Like you said, I don't think that any of us expected, we all wanted Roe v. Wade to be overturned. That was something that all conservatives, or most conservatives, wanted. And when it happened, though, we didn't expect that it was only going to be a state issue. We do have the 14th Amendment for a reason, right? To protect life. And that is a federal issue. That's not just a state issue. Can you imagine if this was any other issue? Let's say it was, drinking and driving. Some states it's allowed to drink and drive, and some it's not. Of course not.
Mhm.
When something is dangerous, it's the government's job to step in and to provide safety and support.
Well, let's watch and see what happens. I mean, the softening position in my mind with the Republican Party is concerning. Again, because they are saying, well, it's been returned to the states as it always should have been. But I definitely agree with you. And when we're looking at our daughters being harmed and not told the full story, not given full disclosure on what these can do to them and just women in general, it seems like we have an incredible responsibility. Your whole story is highlighted in the film Unplanned. And I thank you so much for sharing your testimony and for being such a vocal advocate for life, but even more so for those who have been sold this lie, who believed it, and now you're helping them to come out of this. Thank you so much. Well, now punctuality is actually a sign of white supremacy, if you didn't know, according to a document from Duke University's School of Medicine. The document claims that Western professionalism standards related to dress code, speech, work style, and timeliness are inherently discriminatory against non-whites. So apparently, the anti-racist thing for surgeons to do is to show up late to the operating room. In other news, left-wing activists in California are complaining that an anti-sex trafficking bill will disproportionately harm marginalized communities. Take a look at this.
We believe that SB 1414 takes an overly punitive approach that fails to address the root causes of these issues and will not effectively stop sexual violence. We are particularly concerned that the harsher penalties proposed in this bill will disproportionately impact marginalized communities, especially members of the LGBTQ community, who already suffer from systematic biases within the criminal justice system, particularly when it comes to sexually based offenses. Studies have shown that LGBTQ people, particularly gay and transgendered individuals, are more likely to be charged with sex offenses compared to their heterosexual counterparts.
You simply cannot parody these people anymore. Joe Biden is not beating the allegations that his brain is rapidly being reduced to pudding. Check out this brutal gaffe.
And now I want to hand it over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. President Putin. He's going to beat President Putin. President Zelensky. I'm so focused on beating Putin, we got to worry about it. Anyway, Mr. President.
I'm better.
You are a hell of a lot better.
Later in the evening, Biden referred to Kamala Harris as Vice President Trump. Secretaries Blinken, Austin, and National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan looked like they were about to cry when Biden delivered that self-inflicted blow. Watch this.
Look, I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, but I think she was not qualified to be president. So let's start there.
You can almost see their souls leaving their bodies, trying to escape the embarrassment caused by that buffoon. Joining us now to discuss that buffoon and the waning days of his administration is Jason Meister, a former advisory board member of Donald J. Trump for President Inc. Jason Meister, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I mean, wow, that press conference was incredible.
It sure was. I mean, look, Democrats are locked into the most drawn out and longest plane crash in history, and they deserve it, right? They voted for this imbecile. And Joe Biden was voted by 14.3 million Americans in the primaries across many states. This is the same candidate just a short 4 years ago that outperformed every presidential candidate in American history. 81 million votes. He garnered more votes than Barack Obama. And now Democrats are trying to oust her to top of the ticket and get rid of Joe Biden. the party that's saying that they want to save democracy. Well, that's ironic because removing a candidate from office who garnered 14.3 million votes, 3,984 delegates, 99% of the delegates needed to win the nomination, that's not saving democracy. That's authoritarian dictatorship.
It's such an excellent point that you're making. And to remove him would be in violation of everything the Democrats say that they stand for. So I don't see how they could possibly make that work. Do you think that Biden has done anything to dispel concerns whatsoever about his mental state? I mean, he did try to recover, when he called Zelensky Putin, he tried. What do you think? Was it compelling and convincing?
Yeah, look, Joe Biden did what Joe Biden's been doing for the last 4 years. And the fact of the matter is, the dementia or the cognitive issues that he's dealing with didn't just show up 20 minutes before a 90-minute debate. And that's the point I'm making, is that the Democrats overwhelmingly voted for this, right? And the idea that they can just remove him because he's polling poorly. I mean, if Joe Biden was polling the way that Donald Trump's been dominating the polls for over a year now in every single swing state, we wouldn't even be hearing about this. No one would care about his cognitive issues or his dementia or his Parkinson's. No one would care because the Democrats would be winning. And that's all they care about, is winning this election. And they realize in that 90-minute debate that they're losing this election, and potentially in a landslide. Look, he may have forgotten that, President Zelensky is not President Putin. He may have forgotten that Kamala Harris is his vice president, not Donald Trump. And those are minor slip-ups. So I actually think he performed fairly well last night, which only really puts the Democrats in more of a political pincher, because they are not going to be able to remove him based on his performance last night. And I think this is going to continue on for many weeks.
You're a political strategist. What has been the strategy here with Joe Biden? Why do you think they initially allowed him to do that early debate to begin with?
Yeah, I think it was a Hail Mary. I think that they realized that he was polling so poorly. I don't think in retrospect that the Democrats and the DNC operatives ever thought they had a viable two-term candidate back in 2020 with Joe Biden, because nothing's really changed. I mean, it's the same Joe Biden we saw in 2020. Maybe he's a little bit worse cognitively, but I was talking about his cognitive issues 2019, and the Daily Show had to make a montage making fun of me. But the reality is I was right. And so I don't know what their strategy is. I know that they chose, in my opinion, the most compromised, complicit, compliant, corrupt, and mentally absent candidate they could, with the intent of doing as much damage as they could in the allotted amount of time. That's what Build Back Better was always about. It was about the controlled demolition of our country. They can't build back better in their green, whatever you want to call it, utopian nightmare without destroying the existing political order. And that's exactly what Democrats have been doing for the last 4 years. And they realize that the American people aren't going to reelect that controlled demolition going forward.
So, Jason, you really think that they are seeking to destroy this country?
I do. I know it sounds hyperbolic, but I believe that this is a globalist agenda. I believe that this is the globalists trying to destroy our country. They don't want a populist movement to take back our country and put America first. They want to put America last. If you see any one of Joe Biden's policies, whether it's opening the southern border and flooding our electorate with tens of millions of illegals, whether it's pushing our inflation rates to 40-year highs, whether it's pushing our gas prices so that Americans can't afford gas prices, groceries. I mean, this is destruction. And I don't think I think this is actually intentional. I don't think this is accidental. I don't think that this is incompetence. I think that they chose this mentally absent candidate so they could ram through their socialist communist agenda. And in many ways, they've been very effective. They really have jammed their communist agenda. And I think COVID, in many ways, the pandemic was the tool in which they were able to implement all these policies. If you think about the 6 feet apart, locking everyone up in their basement, shutting down the economy, all of this is the destruction of our country.
It absolutely is. The polls for right now are showing that Biden is still the leading candidate. He's the one that people want. If not him, who else?
Yeah, look, I've looked at a lot of the polls. The most recent Emerson poll, which I looked at, Donald Trump is beating Joe Biden by about 3-4 points. He's beating Kamala Harris by 6. He's beating Gavin Newsom by 8. He's beating Governor Whitmer by about 10 points. They even put Al Gore in there. They dusted off old Al Gore, and he's beating Al Gore by 9 points. So it really doesn't matter who the candidate is. I know a lot of speculation out there that, well, they want to remove Joe Biden because they're going to put a younger, fresher face on this. At the end of the day, it's about the policies. It's not so much about the candidate. And the fact of the matter is, Democrats have destroyed our country over the last 4 years. And Americans have seen such a great contrast between life under Donald Trump and life under the Democrats, or life under Joe Biden. And whether it's Joe Biden or Kamala Harris or Gavin Newsom or Governor Whitmer, it really doesn't matter. Their policies have failed. And Americans now realize that, and they want to go back to making America great again. And that's with Donald Trump.
Jason, you were advising President Trump and working with that whole administration. What is the differences between how people are living right now, just the overall feeling of kind of hopeless and despair versus what you experienced with President Trump? And let's say that he wins in November, God willing. How quickly do we return to that era again?
I think rather quickly, at least from an economic standpoint, and putting America first, trade deals. But I think that the biggest thing that I took away from President Trump's presidency, which we're now dealing with under Joe Biden, is weakness. Weakness under Joe Biden, that is, and strength under Donald Trump. And that was our foreign policy. And the fact of the matter is, under Donald Trump, we had no new warmth. And right now we're dealing with multiple conflicts across the globe. We had the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan, which led to the attack from Putin against Ukraine, which then led to the Hamas attack on Israel via Iran. And we have multiple wars. We're at the brink of thermonuclear war. And that's because we have a weak president under Joe Biden. And our enemies don't respect us and don't trust us. And our allies don't see us protecting them. And that's what kind of the reason why we have so much conflict abroad. We wouldn't have had a disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan, wouldn't have a war in Ukraine. We wouldn't have had an attack on Israel if Donald Trump was president, because he was a peace through strength president. You know, when Kim Jong-un said that he was going to press his red button, Donald Trump said, well, you have no idea how much bigger my red button is. And the fact of the matter is, some of his threats, were really putting the world on notice. And I think that Joe Biden, with his disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan, set the stage for weakness. And that's why we have conflicts across the world.
Many people are asking, Sharona, point out Trump's achievements. Walk us back through those glorious couple of years where everyone was optimistic, living in peace, as you pointed out, and really feeling like there was going to be a future for America. You were there. What are some of the greatest achievements in your mind? In addition, obviously, you just went over foreign policy, but in addition to that.
Yeah, look, we had the lowest unemployment for Black Americans. We had the lowest unemployment for Asian Americans. We had suburban women. We had the crime that is ridden throughout all of our Democrat-run cities right now. Mm-hmm. We didn't have it. We could send our kids to school. They could walk to school safely. We could travel to subways in New York City, Chicago, Baltimore. The crime, I think, is one of the biggest differences. I mean, I go to work in Manhattan, and I'm worried for my safety, for my children, for my wife. And I think that is one of the biggest issues right now that we're dealing with under Democrat leadership in all the major cities. So it's the economy, it's inflation, it's crime, the fentanyl that's crossing our southern border that's killing our children. It's the tens of millions of illegal immigrants that are flooding into our streets, our hospitals, our schools. I mean, we're having to close and shut down schools to house illegal immigrants. So it's all across the board. I mean, there's not one area or the other. I think it's just a global perspective over this country. And it's also just this idea of putting America first as opposed to putting America last.
Absolutely. So, of course, we have to ask the question. It seems unlikely to me, but do you think Biden will commit to one more debate with President Trump? And if he should do that, is this going to be the nail in the coffin? I mean, something has to be done about a man who cannot function properly.
Yeah, look, I think Joe Biden may commit to another debate. Whether his handlers and the Democrat Party allow him to make it to that debate or even become the nominee is still up for arms. But I think that the fact is that, look, Joe Biden is not going anywhere so quickly. You saw that last night. I think he answered all the questions. He may have forgotten who Kamala Harris was and President Zelensky was, but for the most part, he answered the questions And he was Joe Biden, the same Joe Biden that these Democrats voted for, 14.3 million of them in the primaries. And so I don't see him going anywhere. I think the Democrats need to start to look at potentially the 25th Amendment, because if he's not fit to run re-election in 2024, he certainly isn't fit to be president, commander in chief of 4,000 nuclear warheads at 4 a.m. when he gets a call. And so I think the Democrats are in a real bad position. And I don't, a lot of people say, well, they planned on this. They were trying to remove him. I don't think this was planned at all. I think that they're in a very tough position. I don't think they wanted a civil war within the Democrat Party just 4 months before the historic election. And so I think we're looking very good going into November.
As a political strategist, what would be your angle as you watch the division in the Democrat Party? They're always accused of being a well-oiled machine. They run and function together. They are united as one. How would you attack this machine right now?
Yeah, look, when your enemy is imploding, you stand by and watch. I would not take and distract the attention away from the implosion of the Democrat Party. Look, Donald Trump took a wrecking ball to the Bush dynasty, the Clinton dynasty, the Cheney dynasty, and now the Democratic Party. And they deserve every bit of it. They were relying on illegal, unconstitutional lawfare to take out Donald Trump and the MAGA movement, and it failed and backfired magnificently. So my advice is, we are upon the RNC next week. I would stand back, watch the Democrats implode, enjoy every minute of it, and don't distract from your enemy when they're imploding.
Absolutely. Jason Meister, thank you so much for joining us. Follow him on Twitter. It's definitely a salve to my soul. Thank you so much. Republicans are outpacing Democrats in the race to register more voters. An analysis by Decision Desk headquarters of all party voter registration changes in June showed that there were massive gains for the GOP. If there is a groundswell building ahead of November, here is the proof. You've asked and MyPillow has listened. They're finally bringing you the most requested offer ever. Get the queen size premium MyPillow for now just $19.98. MyPillow is made with patented adjustable fill. It adjusts to your exact individual needs regardless of your sleep position. It helps to keep your neck aligned and holds its shape all night long so that you can get the best sleep of your life. But that's not all. You can get their 6-piece kitchen or towel sets for just $25. The brand new mattress topper is as low as $69.98. And I tell you what, it is absolutely fantastic. Get their famous MyPillow bed sheets that I sleep on every single night for as low as $25, and so much more. Go to mypillow.com or call 1-800-977-9152. Make sure to use the promo code Dobbs, and you are going to get those huge discounts on all of the MyPillow products, including the premium queen size MyPillow for just $19.98 right now. That is the lowest price ever, so don't delay. Order today. And make sure you join Lou on his podcast, The Great America Show. Joe Biden wants you to believe that he is completely managing the invasion at the border. He also says that Donald Trump and the GOP are the real villains. Take a look.
Here, it's a tax of $2,500 a year. Second, our efforts to secure the border, southern border, is working. After Trump killed the bipartisan efforts to secure the border, Republicans and Democrats had worked on, because he thought it would benefit me and make him a loser, Republicans walked away. So I took executive action last month. As a consequence, working with Mexico, border encounters have gone down over 50%. The current level is lower today than when Trump left office.
Biden doesn't want you to trust your lying eyes. You're not supposed to notice that an illegal alien who was drunk driving in Alabama just killed a 6-year-old little girl. Biden doesn't want you to notice that crimes committed by illegals under his watch, and neither does the liberal media. According to the Media Research Center, ABC, CBS, and NBC have buried at least 7 recent stories about these criminal illegal aliens. Such an illegal who raped a child in Utah, or another who raped a 13-year-old girl in New York, despite a judge's order that he was to be deported. The crimes that Biden and liberal media elites are covering up involve many children. Think about that for a moment. In some cases, Biden's administration has actually been complicit in the suffering of children. Internal records from Biden's Health and Human Services indicates that the agency placed unaccompanied minors in the custody of individuals associated with MS-13. That's an infamously brutal gang from El Salvador. We only know this now thanks to Senator Chuck Grassley, who made the records public, but Biden says the Democrats are the good guys in this battle over the border. It's a brazen, bold-faced lie. We all know it. These Marxists could not bear to tell this lie without shame. There's nothing that they're ashamed of what they're doing right now. Absolutely nothing. So joining us to discuss this issue, the border crisis, and so much more is Ammon Blair. He is a senior fellow for the Texas Public Policy Foundation's Secure and Sovereign Texas Initiative. Ammon Blair, thank you so much for joining us about this very serious and extremely discouraging topic. It just seems like nothing gets done. Do you think Americans are really buying the lies from Biden right now about the border?
No, ma'am. All you have to do is just come down here. You can come into my region in the Rio Grande Valley. Come see it for yourself. The numbers are going to decrease, and that is just because he is colluding with others like the Mexican government and everyone else to meter the amount of people coming to the border. And so, of course, it's going to decrease because it's based off of collusion and corruption. And unfortunately, the only metrics we use to identify whether the border is secure are immigration metrics. So that is going to be apprehensions, turnbacks, and gotaways. So if the apprehensions go down, then any president, no matter who it is, can come out and say, guess what, guys? Our enforcement is working.
But it's not. And we know that now. We know it's absolutely not working. When you're there and you're watching what's happening there, especially with the releases, knowing that so many potentially violent criminals have been allowed to stay in our country and await their court date, how do you feel about that? Knowing what's happening to children, knowing what's happening to women, knowing about the crime that's happening to our own American citizens. I mean, here we are, we're talking about mainstream media no longer reporting on the crimes against children that these illegal aliens are doing.
Yes, ma'am. Unfortunately, because it would go against their open borders agenda. So if they have to talk about the actual criminal threat or the national security threat at the border, then that means they would have to actually close the border. They would actually have to secure it. And so they're not going to want to allow that information to either go on their media platforms or even talk about it. So they're going to hide the human trafficking. They're going to hide the unaccompanied alien children problem that we have. They're not going to talk about it because then we actually have to do something about it.
We talked a little bit off air about the Grassley report. And can you just give our viewers a timeline on when this was first exposed? When did we first learn that these children were coming across the border and being placed specifically with organizations that we now know were abusing them?
Sure, we really actually saw this under the Obama administration. So if you guys remember in 2014, we saw a lot of caravans coming up, and we were mass releasing back then. And unfortunately, just like what you guys see today, we were releasing them to traffickers, MS-13, you name it, the lowest of the low in society. And so there was a whistleblower that came out in 2015, Jason Piccolo. And Grassley was actually a part of that process as well, all the way back in 2015. So that whistleblower came out, and of course, he was kind of forced out of his job. And then fast forward to today, nothing's been done. So we continue to allow this American slave trade with these children, and now at such a larger rate than we had in 2014. But because nothing was done back then, we're just going to continue on unless someone actually does something other than just a hearing.
So I don't want to leave that subject because it really is about the children, and we keep expecting government to protect the least among us, the most innocent among us, and they're not doing it, obviously, and this just demonstrates that. But one other subject you are very acutely aware of is the threat to our country by these foreign terrorists. You serve as a consultant for Omni Intelligence, and you're sharing with them a lot of information about transnational and domestic terrorism. What's on the horizon for America from your perspective and from this information?
Yes, ma'am. So all you have to do is look at the streets of South Africa. Now, fast forward our society today, maybe in a year or so, and you can see what's happening in South Africa today may or may not happen within 6 months to a year. When we're importing millions of people, specifically a lot of people also from Venezuela, we're bringing in the transnational criminal organizations such as Tren de Aragua. They built their entire criminal enterprise off the backs of 8 million people fleeing Venezuela. And so if you look at the numbers, we know that they weren't originally coming to the United States. The Venezuelans were actually going into South America. So like in 2017, we only had 2,600 apprehensions of Venezuelans. Fast forward to 2023, we had 334,000. So that's why we're seeing such a spike in criminal activity in terms of Tren de Aragua in these TCOs in the US, because we really haven't seen this amount of mass migration from Venezuelans into the United States. And so they hide themselves within these large groups. There's no way in the vetting process, when I was a Border Patrol agent, there's no way that I could tell if this individual or that individual was a member of Tren de Aragua, unless he had a designated tattoo, or if people within the same group ratted on him. That's the only other way. Our systems don't talk with Venezuela. Our systems don't talk with a lot of countries. And so we're allowing all these transnational criminal organizations, not just Tren de Aragua, but like Hezbollah, MS-13, every single non-state adversary into the United States that want to do us harm. And that is one, because we don't really have a vetting process to understand who they are, where they're coming, and why they're coming.
Hammond, describe what that threat looks like for the regular everyday person. What do you mean? I mean, they see TV and they see Chicago sometimes. Maybe they see a lot of people holed up in an airport somewhere. But what does it actually look like to have the threat? What does that unfold in your community? What does that look like?
Sure. So many of the millions of people are coming into the communities, into your states, into your cities. And behind them are these TCOs. So whether that's going to be hard narcotics coming into your cities and towns, the American slave trade that's coming into your cities and towns, and then the criminal element. We can see the spike in violence that is actually happening. So whether your streets or whether you live in the suburbs or the city or rural America, the Mexican cartels have built a complete a system and infrastructure into every single one of our communities that all these adversaries are now going into your home, into your areas. If you have ever had someone not necessarily die, but had an overdose of whether that is fentanyl or any other narcotic, that means that the Mexican cartels are no longer in your back door. They're no longer a Mexico problem. They're now at your front door, and sometimes they're already in. And so whether that's narcotics, human trafficking, the criminal element, violence, the threat of violence, also into your schools. So these unaccompanied children, based off of policies, a lot of times we have kids, or they say they're kids, come up to the border and they claim that they're 17 years old. A lot of times they'll ditch their documents, or they'll buy fake documents from the Mexican cartels. Then as an agency, we release them into the United States, and then they go into your guys' school system. That person could be MS-13, and has happened, where they're killing their students left and right. And it could be a 26-year-old. We have no idea, because we don't have the vetting process. We're not vetting. We're not holding these people in detention to see if they are inadmissible or admissible into the United States. And so in every single aspect of our lives in our communities, it's now going to impact, whether that's socioeconomically, whether that is the safety, whether that is drugs, whether that is trafficking, you name it. Every single part of your society is going to completely decrease. And really, that's what China is looking for, like the CCP. The CCP is looking at trying to destabilize not the country itself, but each region of the country, in each little area. And they're looking at making a massive amounts of progress, dollar amount. And that's why they have completely weaponized the Mexican cartels. The Mexican cartels are acting as their proxies. So that way they can destabilize every parts of our society and at the same time reap amazing benefits, mostly
You
financial.
call this, I heard in your speech, you call this drug warfare that the CCP is raging against using the MS-13 and other cartels, drug warfare on America, and they do have it down to a science. Your speech, by the way, was so compelling that you gave to Congress about what's happening here. You said that $7.4 billion now has been used, allocated to the State Departments, secured by Congress to fund mass immigration. That $7.4 billion, our Congress allowed to fund this massive immigration into our country?
Yes, ma'am. Unfortunately, if you look at what's happening in Poland, if you look at what's happening all across the world, weaponized mass migration is actually nothing new. However, this is the first time in recorded history that we have our country's leadership actually doing weaponized mass migration against his own country, and that is the Biden regime. This is the first time. If you look at the same playbook that Lukashenko is doing in Belarus against Poland, Latvia, and Lithuania, what Russia has done, what other adversary states have done to other democratic nations, is being done to our constitutional republic. But unfortunately, our own president, our own leadership is actually doing it to our own country. So this is unprecedented.
You referenced what the proper role of the federal government is right now. What should they be doing, constitutionally bound, should they be doing for the American people right now?
Oh, well, right now, completely sealing the border. The first and foremost, the federal government's job is to secure its citizens. That's the proper role of government. Without the border security, it's just an open door. It is a red carpet now to every single adversary into your communities. And until we actually stop that flow, it's just going to continue. And now, unfortunately, the invasion has gone on for so many years. We have millions of people here. We have the CCP controlling their enclaves of Chinese nationals. We have Tren de Aragua controlling their enclaves of Venezuelans. You name it, every one of these enclaves of the millions of people are now being controlled in the underworld by transnational criminal organizations or like the CCP. And so we literally have TCOs, and we literally have adversaries operating on our own sovereign soil, governing and controlling people on our soil and in your communities. And unfortunately, we may seal the border. Say we seal the border. Unfortunately, every town is a border town now. And so our law enforcement, no matter where you go, is outfunded, outmanned, and outgunned. There is no way that a sheriff's department is going to be able to take on transnational criminal organizations or a country like the CCP. There's no possible way. And so now we have to look at other avenues. We have to look at the public safety issue, not just national security at the border. We now have to figure out, if Trump comes into office, we now have to figure out how to secure you and your family in your neighborhood, wherever you're at. Because unfortunately, the threat is no longer just at the border, it's in your front door.
Part of the reason the Democrats will not address the border issue is that they think Hispanic voters identify with illegal aliens. But as it turns out, the majority of them support the deportation of illegal aliens. CBS News and YouGov polling shows that 53% favor a program to deport en masse. Democrats have always played a very cynical game of dividing people up by characteristics like race. It's like Marxist class warfare applied to identity politics. Instead of the proletariat against the bourgeoisie, it's black against white, it's man against woman, and so on. Well, with us tonight, someone who knows a lot about both of these tactics. Let's bring on Mike Gonzalez, a senior fellow at the Heritage Foundation and the author of Next Gen Marxism, what it is and how we can combat it. Mike Gonzalez, thank you for joining us tonight on Lou Dobbs. This is, again, we've seen identity politics. We've seen them try to corner us and put us in boxes so we can't be effective. You've written about the invention of Hispanic as a racial category, or which, you know, that's true, but that seems relevant now because the Democrat Party likes to pretend that they are a monolith. Talk to us about this.
Right. You know, I don't even talk about the Hispanic vote. I'm very reluctant to do so. Now, there is some way. I've talked to Rui Teixeira, who is a Democrat, who studies this a lot, and he's very, very smart. He and he says that is mostly true, but they're moving in tandem. For example, in the last election, there was a definite move towards Trump by all groups. Definitely in the Rio Grande Valley with Mexican Americans in Texas, definitely in Miami with Cubans, but even in Hartford and New York and Philadelphia with Puerto Ricans, there was a move, although not as strong, towards Trump. I actually think that in this election, it's very, as Yogi Berra used to say, it's very difficult to prognosticate, especially about the future. But I think we could see better than 45% of this whole group taken together. And the reason why they may move in tandem, and this is a made up group, synthetic, made up of the bureaucracy, but they are immigrants or the children of immigrants, so they have an immigrant ethos, less so in places like the Rio Grande Valley, where they've been there for 17 generations, or New Mexico. And that what the left has done on race and sex has completely gobsmacked them. They don't really get it. They do not. Their answer to the assertion that their daughter can turn magically into a boy is K. It doesn't compute. It doesn't compute with me. It doesn't compute with It doesn't compute with anybody.
No. It's absolute nonsense. And I think that's the point. You've got really common sense people who've been living their lives and they just know 1 + 1 = 2. So they can't figure out how government's coming up with 5 or the Democrat Party's coming up with 10. In this case, I don't even know how many gender there are now, maybe 56, I think, at last count. So I agree with you on that. But, and yet they still target this group, even with the latest poll, I think it was 53% of the quote legal Hispanic community wants mass deportation of those who are here illegal. They still don't get it, that probably means they align with our conservative values and they're going to be Trump supporters.
Yeah, I think that is a big part of the humongous, that was the most dramatic shift what we saw in the Rio Grande Valley in 2020, where Trump really dramatically improves over 2016. He even wins a county, Zapata County, which is like 90% Mexican American, over 90% Mexican American. And I think they're most affected by open borders. In the awful treatment of the Border Patrol. Who do they think? See, the thing is, just like Kamala Harris has never gone to the border, Democrats don't go to the border. They don't travel with the Border Patrol. They don't know that the Border Patrol is, by and large, Mexican American. They go, these guys go home at night, and their wives hear it, and the children hear it. And when Alex, the head of DHS, help me out here, Mayorkas. When Mayorkas and Biden lie about this issue of the Border Patrol mistreating people coming in through the border, that was just insulting because they had the truth. They knew none of that had happened. We know for a fact that Mayorkas, when he said these things, knew the truth, that had not taken place. People do not forget these things.
They don't. They absolutely don't. Do you think that the Democrat Party is going to shift the way that they're dealing with things? I've noticed that some of the Democrat governors are coming out saying they support closing the border under Biden. I mean, they're trying to elevate it as though this was Biden's idea. These are the same governors that have sanctuary states. They welcome illegal aliens into their state, fund them, put them on welfare right away, give them housing, every driver's license even. And yet now they're standing with close the border. Do you think that's going to work?
Well, I think that they finally they thought that it was going to be contained, that it was only people who watched conservative news would know about the chaos in the border. That was out of the bag 18 months ago, two years ago. The whole country knows, and I think the whole country is horrified by this, and they're waking up to this. They're waking up to, oh my God, what have we created? What have we done to ourselves politically? I don't think that with, what is it, 120 days to the election?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're getting. Mm-hmm.
Once an idea is baked in, it hardens like cement. While cement is wet, you can mold it, but once it hardens, it's very hard to chip away at it. It's very hard to mold it. Impossible, actually. And I think this one is something that may have already happened. I think there's a view that the left, that Biden has really screwed the border. And I don't see how that toothpaste cannot be put back in the tube.
Mhm. Too many people have suffered. Too many people have lost loved ones, have had personal experiences now with the impact of that. You spent 20 years as a journalist, 15 of those across the seas, Asia. You were in Asia, Latin America, Europe. I want to know from your perspective, what do other countries think about what's happening in America right now? Do you still keep in contact? What is their perception of what's happening here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be in Europe next week, and I do talk to Europe quite a lot, a little bit less so with Latin America, but I also do speak with people in Latin America. Look, the globe is wired together. Everybody saw that conference. Everybody saw that press conference. Everybody, I have members of my family who live in Scotland through my wife. I talk to them a lot, and they saw it. They are, I was talking to an older Scottish woman who is a member of my family, and she was like, "Oh my God, what happened?" And she's like trying to figure out what they can do with Biden. And she was very well informed, better informed than I was. She said, they can use the 25th Amendment. Here's a woman living 25 minutes from St. Andrews who knows all about the 25th Amendment. Can you imagine?
That I like that. That gives me a little bit of hope. I appreciate that. In all of the work that you've been doing with these factions, your book about BLM and how those Marxist organizations have been taking over America, where does that fit into what's happening right now? And do you have any predictions in November? Should Trump take office, what we can see, what we should be expecting, or at least be looking at with those organizations that have formed under this administration and prior leftist administrations?
Well, I just published a paper about 2 weeks ago, which has led to some congressional action, in which I looked at the infrastructure that supports the pro-Hamas demonstrations. And it's exactly the same it's the same ecosystem that sustained BLM. It's the same donors, it's the same fiscal sponsors, it's the same independent far left media groups, and it's the same activists that supported BLM that wrecked our lives, really has changed the country. People have to understand all these changes, all these deep and vast changes that we have seen in our lives. A lot of them are deeply accelerated in 2020 when the very white keepers of our cultural institutions surrendered and accepted fallacies such as we're systemically racist and all these things, and signed up for transforming the country. So I think this is I have a piece today in the Examiner in which I say there's a counter-revolution taking place. In the counter-revolution too, it's not just, it used to be Bill Buckley used to say that a conservative stood at the thwart of history yelling stop. That's not conservatives anymore. We need to reverse ground. We need to take back the ground that we have lost, the cultural ground that we have lost in the last 15 years. And I think that any administration that comes in that is conservative, any Congress that comes in that is conservative, any senators that do not understand this, do not understand that we have a cultural battle in our hand to save America, to take back this lost terrain, to claw it back. They really do not know what time it is.
I fear that you're right. I feel that the political elite are so far removed from the average everyday American and what we are going through, what we are experiencing on the day today, that it will not happen without voices like yours, especially. Your book is called Next Gen Marxism, what it is and how to combat it. It should be a mandatory read. You've asked and MyPillow has listened. They're finally bringing you the most requested offer ever. Get the queen size premium MyPillow now for just $19.98. MyPillow is made with patented adjustable fill. It adjusts to your exact individual needs regardless of your sleep position. It helps your neck to stay aligned. It holds its shape all night long so that you're going to get the best sleep of your life. But that's not all. You can get their 6-piece kitchen or bath towel sets for just $25. The brand new mattress topper is only $69.98. I love it. I sleep on it every single night. And get their famous MyPillow bed sheets, also a staple in our household, for just $25. And there's so much more. So go to mypillow.com, use the code Dobbs, or you can call 1-800-977-9152. Use promo code Dobbs and enjoy all of these special savings just for you. MyPillow products, including the premium queen size MyPillow. Remember, it's only $19.98 right now. That is the lowest price ever. Don't delay. Order today. and join Lou on his podcast, The Great America Show. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. Join us again on Monday at 8 Eastern Time, 7 o'clock Central. And as always, good night and God bless.